that's sponsoring this evening's event. Right. Are we ready to start the show? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Christo van der Rede, born and bred here in Cape Town. Spent my life working very hard so that I can retire when I turn 60. Unfortunately, that did not happen. But I married a very beautiful young wife. She sits over there. So who am I to complain? It's indeed an honor to welcome all of you. You know, and we have such a lot of great people here tonight. And all of you are really great in the sense that you support the work of the FW de Klerk Foundation. And yes, we've been very active out there to serve as the conscience of the nation. It's so important that we, as a nation, stay together, stand together, work together, because we know where we come from. And we will not allow anyone to divide us in terms of whatever. So that's our purpose. Tonight we have a very, very special guest. He comes from very, very far. Jonathan Granoff. Jonathan, if you can stand, just show the people. Yes. He looks like me, you know. Oh yes. Somebody said the other day, I'm just the darker version of FW. But I come from the West Coast, so there when we walk along the beach with my beautiful wife, then you immediately your skin changes to become a bit darker. We went to New York once, and everybody came up to my wife and me, and they look at our skins. They said, "Oh, you are so beautiful, your skin. Look at your skin." I said, "What the hell? I'm trying to get rid of the skin, and these people tell me." So it's really an honor. And where's our chairperson, Elita? The lady of the house, Elita, please stand up. Yes. We also have a very special guest, Ms. Moshante, please, if you can rise. Yes, our former president. And then we also have the one and only public protector, if you can rise as well. Yes. Yeah. And then we have Magda Waziska. Where is Magda sitting? There, right at the back. Hello, Magda. You must come sit here in front, eh? All of our funders sit in front. And then the staff of Kaz, Christian, Endres, welcome also to you. And then our very special board members, if they can just rise, all of our board members just stand up over here. Dr. Lucky, please, all of you stand. Kanina, yeah. And there's Christina right at the back. So our board members have been with us for 2 days, and we have engaged about the programs that we do and our staff. Where are the staff? Can you rise as well? Daniela, where's Ishmael? Yeah. And yes, there's our interns right at the back. And our board said, how is it possible that the 5 of you do work that looks like you can fill the whole Naspers building here at the bottom? I said, because we are committed, we are sincere, and it's all about the country's interest. So tonight, the staff, it's the end of the year. I can't give you much, but a few days off, but I think you deserve it. Give them a nice round of applause. So whom did I leave out? Anyone? Elita? Oh, myself. Okay, hello, Christo. How are you? So, ladies and gentlemen, let me bring an end to my clownliness, and let me ask Mr. Christian Indris to please step forward to also share a few pearls of wisdom. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's somewhere between good evening and good afternoon. I'm going to vacillate between the two, I suspect. Dear Mrs. de Klerk, our guest speaker, Jonathan Granoff, dear Christoph van der Riede, representatives of the diplomatic corps present, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Christian Endres, and I am proud to welcome you on behalf of the Konrad Adenauer Foundation this evening, and on behalf of the resident representative of CAS in South Africa, Mr. Gregor Yeke. He is unfortunately unable to be here tonight due to travel commitments, but he wishes us a very thought-provoking discussion, and I suspect that is going to be delivered. May I begin by expressing my gratitude to the FW de Klerk Foundation, with whom we share a long-standing relationship based on shared values. We feel great pleasure at CAS to welcome our distinguished speaker, Jonathan Granoff, and thank you for sharing your wisdom with us in these very disrupted times. The legacy of President FW de Klerk's extraordinary decision to dismantle South Africa's nuclear weapons in a similarly epochal period in world history looms very large over us in this room. I will come back to this later. I'd like to introduce CAS briefly. We are a German think tank and political foundation with over 100 offices worldwide, and we feel bound to the political memory and legacy of the first Chancellor of West Germany, the Federal Republic of Germany, Konrad Adenauer. His principles serve as our mission and our commitment, and we are firmly committed to liberal, multi-party democracy, the rule of law, and the social market economy. Through our work, we contribute towards securing and increasing peace, and thus freedom, and thus prosperity throughout the world. And through partnerships with organizations like the FW de Klerk Foundation, we are very happy to be able to provide spaces like this for South Africans to address South African challenges and come up with their solutions, while also learning, of course, and taking the lessons with us. I invite you to have a look at our website and social media channels to learn more about our work. Now, as many of you know, having been at these functions before, CAS is linked to the German party, the Christian Democratic Union, which was the party of the former chancellors, Konrad Adenauer, evidently, Helmut Kohl, Angela Merkel, and now Chancellor Friedrich Merz. Therefore, I'd like to do a brief reflection on Germany's role in the topic tonight. After World War II, Germany was rightly viewed as a nation that could not be trusted with weapons of mass destruction. So in 1954, Chancellor Konrad Adenauer signed an agreement renouncing the production of its own nuclear, biological, or chemical weapons on its territory. And in return, West Germany was included in the US nuclear deterrence strategy. Germany has twice more renounced nuclear weapons under international law. The 1975 Non-Proliferation Treaty and in the 1990 2+4 treaty, signed by Chancellor Helmut Kohl, which reunited Germany. Now, as a NATO member, Germany still hosts US nuclear weapons on its soil. When I travel from one part of the family to another in Germany, we go past Bücher, where supposedly some of those nuclear weapons are stored. As a consequence, Germany does not support the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons because Germany believes these weapons to remain essential to its security. And this takes us to the nub of tonight's conversation. Kaz's sharing of this view of the essentialness of nuclear weapons to security has been reinforced by the unprovoked invasion of Ukraine, by its nuclear-armed neighbor, Russia, with the aim of territorial conquest. The global order is shifting. We are witnessing, once again, a clash between liberal democratic and autocratic models and diverging visions for the future of international cooperation. Everybody here in this room knows that the United States is retreating from its traditional model of leadership, while China seeks to fill the vacuum with its own model of multilateralism. And at the same time, in many countries, there are illiberal forces and anti-globalization sentiments that undermine trust in global institutions like the UN. So in this context, the dialogue tonight. We must defend liberal values and proactively shape the evolving global order, because otherwise it will be shaped for us. Kaz is engaged in multilateral forums across the world, working to preserve effective mechanisms, but also to reform those in need of renewal. And we know that strengthening multilateralism is actually a domestic task. If any of you are reading the news in Europe and the rise of populism in many, many electorates, we really must address the roots of this populism and those that are disillusioned by globalization, because they are undermining the collective security of all of us, even here in the far southern tip of Africa. I spoke to somebody earlier and they said that they feel like they need to defrag every time they look at the news in the morning. We are living in deeply unsettling times. And I'd say it's the most unsettling period, really, since the fall of the wall. Agreements and treaties appear to live and die at the whim of individuals. I have to admit, I didn't expect that when I was at university. And this unpredictability has profound consequences for global security. Because despite its flaw, and many flaws, the post-World War II multilateral order has delivered much peace, prosperity, and human rights in comparison to what went before. We must recommit to dialogue, cooperation, and most importantly, a rules-based international system. Institutional architecture, like the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, has helped safeguard the world for decades. But it sometimes feels to me that at the moment, the greatest mechanism that we have at the moment for our safety from nuclear weapons is that the person who will order the beginning of the war will commit suicide. That is deeply uncomfortable to me. In fact, I'm trembling as I say it. So let us not grow complacent. When the stability of leaders is frequently discussed in the press, the mental stability, and we know that individuals have our fate in their hands, we need to realize that the threat of mass destruction is real. In the 1980s, it was clear as day. People seem to not be acknowledging that it exists right now. So disarmament remains very much an active effort. We need renewed political will. We need global cooperation. And so to that end, I'd like to say, Jonathan Granoff, thank you so much for coming to us for today's event, because it really is the topic of the moment as we face the destruction of everything we hold dear. Thank you, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have now arrived at the big moment of the evening. But before we proceed, I just want to welcome all of our guests online. We've got lots of people also tuning online as they could not be here today. I also note a lot of representatives of different embassies here tonight. Welcome to you all. But also, where is Dr. Musi Maimani? I've seen him. There he sits. Why you sit at the back? You're a politician. You must sit here in front. Welcome to you. Jonathan, over to you. We have quite a description of Jonathan inside our program. I'm not going to read it and entertain you. Jonathan, please come and share your pearls of wisdom.
I don't know if it'll be wisdom, but I'll do my best. And I hope I can honor the legacy of your husband, Mrs. de Klerk, appropriately. Well, I agree with everything that my predecessor speaker just said. We're absolutely at a moment of hazard. We're not only a moment of hazard with respect to nuclear weapons, we're also at a moment of hazard with the principles upon which the Constitution of this country is founded. Constitutionalism is being challenged by populism all over, so I'll be talking about that as well. But I first want to say, when I got off the plane coming here, what amazed me was the people who facilitate wheelchairs and help people get off the plane. They hugged the stewards. And I thought, well, maybe I'm coming to Hawaii. I mean, I just got the aloha vibe. I didn't expect this at all. But I was very happy to have that happen. So I'm really happy to be here. You know, it's wonderful for a gathering where people take ideas seriously, because ideas matter. Policies matter. They're not just abstractions. They're very important. So let me express my gratitude to the FW de Klerk Foundation and its leadership for bestowing this opportunity on me. It's a privilege. I only regret that my colleague David Stewart is unwell. He has shingles, and it's just very painful situation. But I feel confident he'll be, in a few days it goes away. But it's rough. I had the privilege of working with him and President de Klerk on documents for the summits of the Nobel Peace Laureates, and I'll be talking about that. And so that's how I came to know FW and David, is in a working relationship. FW seized a historic opportunity of a convergence of moral imperatives and practical necessities to end this scourge of racial injustice and apartheid and the hazard of the possession and implied threat of nuclear weapons. One of the qualities that I saw in President de Klerk was his capacity to listen and incorporate the ideas of people that he didn't begin agreeing with and find common ground. Now, working with the Nobel Peace Laureates is not that easy, because each of them is representing God. And it's very difficult for them to, oddly enough, to modify their positions. I'll give you an example. In so there's been a number, President Gorbachev started this group, and since 2000 there have been, I think, 17 of these summits. And there was one of them that took place. It was supposed to be here, but the Dalai Lama couldn't get a visa, so we had to move it to Rome. And I was privileged to help draft a draft of the statement, and I began and said, there's nothing that's so much an impediment to peace as the mind of men without compassion and love. There's nothing so noble as a person who suffered from oppression who overcomes it with forgiveness and patience and wisdom. For that reason, we honor the legacy of Nelson Mandela. So I got a call from some of the feminist Nobel Peace Laureates who said, how can you say that? How can I say what? The mind of man. Excuse me, what did I say? The mind of men and women without love and compassion? It has no mellifluousness. It was easy to rectify. So I said the human mind without love and compassion. Then I got a call from another group of Nobel laureates that said, we can't sign it, we're a scientific organization and that's too spiritual. So I said, you'll have to take that up with Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama and leave me alone. I'd like to begin with focusing on some of the things that FW de Klerk achieved. He set a vision that's noble and practical for any nation. It's a compass point. Here are the words of the vision that he had for this country that has become embodied in its Constitution. So he said this before it was fully embodied in the Constitution. This was his vision as he expressed it when he received the Nobel Prize. The establishment of a constitutional system where the law, the Constitution, and a Bill of Rights will be sovereign includes the protection of the basic rights of all individuals, communities, and cultural groups within an independent constitutional court that will act as the guardian of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Now, the Bill of Rights of South Africa's constitution is far more extensive than the Bill of Rights of the United States. The Bill of Rights of the United States is fairly terse. It basically limits the power of the state to impose its will on people's freedom. But the Bill of Rights of South Africa is extremely thorough. It talks about rights that weren't even envisioned in the 18th century when the Bill of Rights of the United States was created. So it sets forth a vision, and the vision exceeds our present grasp, but it tells us where we need to go, and that's why vision is so important. And I'm quoting from what he said, a balanced division of functions and powers between strong provincial governments based on federal principles and a central government, mechanisms for constitutional amendment, full participation in all fields of endeavor to all South Africans, without discrimination in any way on the basis of color, creed, class, or gender. All the major safeguards which our communities will need to maintain their respective identities and ways of life. Adequate guarantees for the political, social, cultural, and economic rights of all individuals. And he said, I believe that this framework for the peace will succeed if we can now establish the frame of mind. That's interesting. They didn't just address the external institutional structures, but the importance of a change of mind, a change of attitude, which is necessary for peace. A change of mind which will lead people to resolve differences through negotiation, compromise, and agreements, instead of through compulsion and violence. If one looks at the existing Constitution of South Africa, it actually includes all the elements of his vision. And it took years of argument and compromise between the different interests of the country to achieve it. But there's a deeper vision that's not usually talked about with President de Klerk, which should never be overlooked. It's instructive to all of us today. It tells us of the frame of mind and heart we need most, and I'll quote from him. I think it might surprise you. This is in his Nobel Peace Acceptance speech. The greatest peace, I believe, is the peace which we derive from our faith in God Almighty, from certainty about our relationship with our Creator. Crises might beset us, battles might rage about us, but if we have faith and the certainty it brings, we will enjoy peace, the peace that surpasses all understanding. And I believe that in the way that President Mandela overcame the legitimate resentment for the oppression of being jailed for 27 years, he conquered himself with forgiveness and compassion. FW conquered fear because his life was put on the line when he was doing this. And these accomplishments of overcoming negativity and overcoming fear, in some ways, tower even above political achievements, because we're accountable for that. We're not all accountable for political achievements, but we're all accountable for our characters. And that's one of the reasons why they were able to achieve so much, because even though they had political disagreements, they recognized the integrity of their counterpart's character. Mandela spoke openly about this, and so did de Klerk. Exactly the same point. It was a point that George Shultz talked about that helped end the Cold War. Trust is the currency of the realm. And they came to trust each other as people. They didn't agree. That's really important. We don't have to agree, but we have to learn to recognize the dignity of every person so that we can build trust. That's what's broken down in the international order, is trust. And the previous speaker highlights the problem that we face today, which is a breakdown of trust that we're seeing putting us in hazard. During the height of the Cold War, I was the UN representative of a lawyers' organization that brought dozens of lawyers from the then Soviet Union to the United States. And they saw jury trials. They went, my God, citizens are involved in the administration of justice? But the thing that really amazed them is when they met a judge who was holding the city of Philadelphia in contempt of court for overcrowding of prisons. They said, how can you do this? Hold the state. She said, because we have the rule of law, and the state is subject to the law. And we sent lawyers from the United States there who came back and said, there's human beings in the Soviet Union, and we can't kill them all. And we built bridges of trust through civil society interaction, through people-to-people diplomacy. That's not happening now. And that's really important. So I would say there's a counterpart to what FW said, which is to love God with all of one's soul, heart, and mind, and then, like unto this, to love our neighbor as we love ourselves. Now, that part of it, neighbor, is not a physical location. It's a moral location. And the enabling environment for love to flourish in a society is what a constitution is about. It sets an enabling environment for human beings to live their humanity. Without it, you have differences leading to adversity. And that's where trust breaks down. When you have a constitutional system that guarantees dissent and differences, then the differences amplify understanding because you get more points of view. And you look at the history of the United States, all of the benefits of the society that I've been privileged to grow up in arise from that spirit of checks and balances and respect for diversity. So the first part of this admonition is the inner part. The second part of loving our neighbors deals with the outer part. And that's why the constitutional system that's been established here is so important and sets such an example. It's one of the greatest constitutions in the world. And I used to teach this stuff in a university, and so I studied a bunch of them. And it's the most thorough in terms of rights. But when you look at the rights, of course, for all of us, we understand these rights only exist if we have a sense of responsibility of protecting them for everybody. One of the greatest threats to that peace of every single person on the planet are nuclear weapons. There's nobody exempt from this. There are over 13,000 of them in the world today. If less than 2% of them were to explode, it would throw enough soot into the stratosphere to cause enough destruction to the agricultural base of civilization that we wouldn't have civilization. That's just to say that would be one Trident submarine or one of the comparable submarines of Russia using their arsenal on that one submarine could literally affect the agricultural base of the entire planet. It's impossible to imagine the destructive capacity of these weapons. As FW said in 2013 at a conference in Helsinki, at this very moment, gliding noiselessly beneath the surface of distant oceans, there are nuclear submarines armed with destructive power that would make the cataclysm of Hiroshima seem relatively insignificant. A single Trident submarine has the capacity to launch up to 192. Now it's about 150 after the START treaty, but that may expire soon. Up to then 192 independently targeted warheads in the 450 kiloton range at as many cities within a range of 6,000 kilometers. Each warhead has a destructive power 25 times as great as the bomb that destroyed Hiroshima. The United States has 14 Ohio-class submarines armed with these Trident missiles. The Russians, the British, the French, and Chinese have similar, but fewer, armed vessels. The qualitative and quantitative threat he describes then has only increased with the current geopolitical instability. His solution is worth noting, for he walked his talk. Responding to the buildup of Soviet-supported forces, particularly Cuban forces in Angola in the 1970s, secretly, South Africa developed a nuclear weapons program and produced 6 nuclear weapons capable of immense destruction. The theory of this strategy was that if there was an imminent regional threat, that South Africa would demonstrate its nuclear capacity, thus stimulating the United States to come to its aid and support to respond to the threat. Just grasp that. I mean, just think of the risk involved in producing the enriched uranium and plutonium for these weapons, and if terrorists got a hold of that material, what it would mean. Or now we know there's like 2 phenomena, oops and bozo. Oops is the computer made an error. Oops is 1983, the computers in the Soviet Union go off showing a full-scale American launch. And one man, Stanislav Petrov, saves the world because he doesn't pass it up the command and control, because he knows that within hours, 11,000 nuclear warheads would hit North America and everybody would be wiped out. So he saves the world. I asked him, how did you do this? For a Norwegian documentary, he said, I was a computer engineer. I knew computers make mistakes. And God told me he didn't want the world to end. And then he said, and I'll skip the accent, my superiors didn't know whether to reward me for saving the world or punish me for violating my protocols. But what really got them upset is that I believed in God. One of my mentors is former Secretary of Defense William Perry. He told me about a computer chip that couldn't distinguish between a sunrise and a full-scale Soviet launch in the United States. Or there was another time where there was a senator gone to Cheyenne Mountain, which the command and control of the nuclear arsenals was there, and someone was showing how well organized they were, and they put a training tape in. And the training tape made the entire system look like we were under a full-scale attack. Well, wait a minute. In 2018, in Honolulu, the emergency system told everybody in Honolulu that they were about to receive nuclear weapons from North Korea. And for over 35 minutes, the people of Honolulu were in a complete gridlock of traffic, trying to get out of the city. Wouldn't have mattered, because they really believed that they were under threat. So in other words, mistakes can be made. I call that oops. Then, of course, there's bozo. And I'll constrain myself in talking about that. But that means that even in the best of democracies, even in the best of situations, let me say it this way. I'm a fairly patient person, but I have my bozo days. You can ask my wife. Anybody, any day, can be off kilter. And the idea that 2 or 3 men put the entire fate of humanity and the very future of the planet Earth at risk is totally irrational. No one should have those responsibilities. And thus when FW became president, he looked at the situation, having analyzed this, and I spoke with him about this at length. He thought they were morally wrong to have these weapons, and they were practically of no value because after the Berlin Wall came down and the Cold War was over, and the 50,000 Cuban troops in Angola went home, there was no reason to have them. So one of the first things that he ensured happened is the dismantling of the arsenal. And South Africa is the only country in the world that has given up a nuclear arsenal that it created. Kazakhstan gave up their arsenal and gave it back to Russia, as did Ukraine and Belarus. But those weapons were produced and created in Russia. South Africa gave up an arsenal that it created. So it has huge moral authority in the world, and it has used that moral authority diplomatically to advance a treaty making the entirety of Africa a nuclear weapons-free zone, the Treaty of Pelindaba. That's quite an accomplishment, and it wouldn't have happened but for what happened here. It used that moral authority to be a leader in the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty negotiations. So I'll just digress. The Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty is the third most important legal instrument of the 20th century. The first is the UN Charter. The second is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And the third is the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, because after the Cuban Missile Crisis, the intelligence apparatus of Russia, the Soviet Union, and the United States concluded that absent a legal constraint, there'll be dozens of nuclear weapon states, which would turn every regional crisis into a global existential crisis. So in 1970, the treaty entered into force. It had within it a provision that after 25 years, it would be determined by the parties to the treaty whether it would be extended indefinitely, whether it would be terminated, or whether it would be extended for a particular period of time. South Africa engaged very passionately in the negotiations because one of the first things it did when it gave up its arsenal was join the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty as a non-nuclear weapon state. And in those negotiations for the indefinite extension of the treaty, it was agreed that every 5 years the treaty would be reviewed to see whether the 5 nuclear weapon states, the United States, France, the United Kingdom, China, and Russia, had lived up to their disarmament commitment under the treaty, because the bargain of the treaty was 182 countries say, we won't have the weapons. But we want negotiations for elimination. That's in the treaty. The disarmament commitment is in the treaty. So part of the agreement for the indefinite extension was a comprehensive test ban treaty, which is clearly now at risk. And every 5 years there'll be review. South Africa joined with 5 other countries in the new, what they called the New Agenda Coalition, to build bridges between the maximalist demand for nuclear disarmament now and the intransigence of the nuclear weapon states. This was around 2000. And there were lots of commitments made by the nuclear weapon states to progress, strengthening the international atomic energy safeguards, for example, lowering the operational status of the weapons and the political status of the weapons. There were lots of promises, but the promises, again, were reiterated in 2010, but they haven't lived up to them. And in the frustration for this, countries got together, and South Africa is one of the leaders of this. In over 90, I think it's 95 countries have signed the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons to express the demand for the abolition of these weapons. And South Africa has been a leader in this. People don't know that there are 115 nations in nuclear weapons-free zones. The entirety of the Southern Hemisphere is virtually nuclear weapons-free because of this. There's the treaty, and they're beautiful names. There's the Treaty of Tlatelolco, making Latin America nuclear weapons-free, stopping the nuclear arms race between Argentina and Brazil that was happening. Treaty of Raratango, making the South Pacific nuclear weapons-free. The Treaty of Astana, making Central Asia nuclear weapons-free. and then a treaty making Southeast Asia nuclear weapons free. So the vast majority of countries in the world are nuclear weapons free by law. People don't know that. It's not as exciting as the crisis du jour. So because of the moral authority of South Africa in eliminating its nuclear arsenal, it has a, well, for the size of it, a disproportionately positive influence on the movement of history to eliminate nuclear weapons. If we don't get behind this and give it support, well, I got involved in this because in 1967, I was interning in Washington. I'm a lot older than I look or behave. And I had the privilege of having a small group of interns, there were 6 of us, had lunch with then Senator Robert Kennedy from New York, who was the Attorney General during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and he told us what happened. And he told us really that it was mostly good luck that saved us. They didn't know that the nuclear weapons in Cuba were operational. And had the Joint Chiefs of Staff done what they wanted to do, which was invade Cuba, they would have been launched, and we wouldn't be here today. We came so close, so close. And he really shocked us, because this wasn't public, how dangerous it was. And he said, and I remember it to this day, he said, if we get every issue right, but not this one, it won't matter. And he said, it's the moral and practical litmus test of modernity. And I've thought about that, which is nuclear weapons are 1930s physics and 1940s technology. Do you think that the people who think up ways to destroy us, to destroy each other as part of the pursuit of security, have been in retirement since 1945? So we have weapons now that are unimaginably destructive that can allow fewer people for less cost to do more harm faster. The arsenal that Ambassador Thomas Graham, I'm the president of the Global Security Institute, and one of my board members is Ambassador Thomas Graham. Ambassador Graham was the person who came to South Africa on behalf of the United States to observe the destruction of the arsenal. And so he got a full briefing. And before I came, I asked him, what should I convey? And this is what he said. 1, the cost of it was less than $25 million. The technology was technology you could get off the shelf. Just think about that. That the cost of these weapons is relatively small. Sub-state actors have that kind of those kind of resources. There are a handful of billionaires that could do it on the side. And the technology, anybody with a doctorate in physics today knows how to do this. And now with the proliferation of nuclear energy plants, there's more people with the scientific expertise to make this happen. It's interesting that the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty guarantees and it says inalienable, I don't know why it uses that language, inalienable right to nuclear energy. I've always thought, and forgive me if I offend anybody, but I think that nuclear energy is a way of producing energies like building a house without a bathroom, because we haven't solved the waste issue. On the other hand, it may be a bridge to a better use of fuel for the climate. So it's an interesting discussion. But the right to it is embodied in the treaty. By spreading it, there will be more people with the technical capacity to build weapons. So in some sense, we can't have this increased speed of decision-making that AI is going to have, as well as more people with the technological capacity to make these weapons, and more of the material that can be used to make these bombs in the world. You can't have both cyber world and nuclear weapons. It's too dangerous. So not only is it morally incomprehensible to have these weapons that can destroy humanity and destroy the future, it's it's a practical hazard of unimaginable degree. And thus, South Africa's passionate, clear advocacy for a nuclear weapons-free world takes on even greater importance. And don't think that this is a cry in the wilderness by any stretch of the imagination. Every one of the summits of the Nobel Peace winners emphasized this, and FW de Klerk and Mikhail Gorbachev and Lech Walesa and all of these towering heroes of our time, without exception, whether it was Jane Goodall, didn't win a Nobel Prize, but certainly, may she rest in peace, was a moral leader of our time. Pope Francis, and I met with him about this, Pope Francis, every single person who's looked at this from a moral lens has said, this is unacceptable. But I look at it from a geopolitical and practical lens, and I go back to Oops and Bozo. It's just simply incomprehensibly. Imagine this. Imagine if the Biological Weapons Convention said, no country can use polio or smallpox as a weapon. That would be right. That would be good. But we'll let 9 countries use the plague as a weapon to institute international peace and security. We would see, you can see how incoherent that is and unstable that is. And I think it's unstable because it violates the most basic ethical principle of a universal nature, the golden rule. How can these weapons be good for my country, but not good for everybody? And the previous speaker pointed out the NATO alliance as a non-proliferation aspect, that countries under the nuclear umbrella don't have to get them. That's a good thing. But if it's good for the most powerful and necessary for the most powerful military structure in human history, why would it not be something good for everybody? So it violates our just general sense of fairness. Why should a handful of countries be secure and the rest not? Well, the fact is we're not secure. And one of the things that you get if you have nuclear weapons is you get targeted. Right? You're the first line of being targeted. So FW said when he received the Nobel Prize, we owe it to the children of the world to stop the conflicts and create new horizons for them. They deserve peace and decent opportunities in life. I should like to dedicate this address, his Nobel acceptance speech, to them and to all those, such as UNICEF, who are working to alleviate their plight. The question that we must ask is whether we are making progress toward the goal of universal peace. Or are we caught up in a treadmill of history, turning forever on the axle of mindless aggression and self-destruction? I'd like to end with 2 suggestions to help fulfill the intergenerational responsibility that he was referring to. 1, every secondary school child should have a copy of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights as part of their civics education. Every school child should have a civics education of how the government of their country works and their responsibilities to their country. But in today's world, every neighborhood is global. This suit I have, the material was made in one country, the finances in another, the tailoring in another, the marketing in another. We live in an integrated world. This is the fact of the matter. There's 2 images of modernity that my grandparents didn't have. One is the mushroom cloud. My grandfather, who walked from a village near Kiev to Odessa in 1917 to get to the United States, where he ended up in Brooklyn and learned Italian. If he saw that, he saw the image of the mushroom cloud, he'd think of mushroom and barley soup. He wouldn't think of Hiroshima. And if he saw the picture of the blue marble, the picture of the planet Earth, this delicate, precious, wonderful place where we can love one another from outer space, he would think of a marble. But these are the 2 icons of modernity, in my opinion. One of them is that icon of a borderless it's only 5 miles up to the stratosphere, in which all of the passions and stories of humanity take place without borders. I mean, these are things we create. We created nations in the 17th century to stop crazy people from slaughtering each other based on whose definition of Jesus' love is preferred. I mean, just grasp that. That's what was happening in the 17th century in Central Europe. The 30 Years' War was people were killing each other in the name of God. And a bunch of wonks, people like us, got together in Westphalia and said, we've got to figure out some way of stopping this. Because these people don't care if they die doing this because they'll think they'll get to heaven. So they created modern states to separate people. Our dilemma today is these institutions that were created to solve problems of the 17th century. Our problem today is, how do we get together? 60% of our oxygen comes from the phytoplankton. There's no nation in the world that can protect the oceans alone. We can only protect the oceans if we work at it together. There's no nation alone that can protect the rainforests. There's no nation alone that can address the climate crisis, melting the polar ice cap. And I thought to myself, I had a diplomatic posting a few years ago. I was representing the institution that arose out of the UN Convention Against Corruption. So I was part of the debates in creating the Sustainable Development Goals statement for the heads of state. And I noted that all of the debate was all about the how. It was all technical. I mean, imagine talking to your neighbor about the 17 SDG goals, right? You know, you could lead a meditation on that one. Or the NPT or the CTBT. People don't care about the how. They want to know what's the right thing to do. What's the good thing to do? That's what drives people. That's what they understand. And when you look at the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, it really is about our responsibility to the future. It's also about our responsibility to those least amongst us. So I was listening to this and thinking to myself, my goodness, what I'm seeing here, as wonderful as it is not gaining public traction because people don't understand it. And then as a lawyer, I'd studied like the evolution of positive law. The evolution of positive law is always based on ethical foundations. So then I thought, what's the most universal ethical principle we have? It's the golden rule. You can find it in Mahavir, the Jains from tens of thousands of years ago. You find it by Jesus, by Muhammad, by Confucius, by Socrates. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Or another version, do not harm others as you don't want to be harmed. It's universal because it comes from the human conscience. But when Jesus said it, when Socrates said it, when Muhammad said it, you couldn't melt the polar ice cap. You couldn't destroy humanity in an afternoon. You couldn't destroy the future, which is what the SDGs are about, our responsibility to the future. So I thought to myself, we need a golden rule for today. It has to be universal. It has to be understandable by anybody. And it has to be true. So I propose this to you. And if you think it's true, tell others about it. If you don't think it is, write me a letter. Write me an email, rather. My email is my name @gmail. So it's easy to get to. And if I'm wrong, tell me. But I don't think so, because it comes from the quiet place of conscience, which is treat the lives and well-being of future generations as we want to be treated. That, I think, is the golden rule for the 21st century. Now, the way to do that is nations have to treat other nations as they want to be treated, and religions should treat other religions as they want to be treated. But we do have a responsibility to future generations that our grandparents didn't have, because when they were alive, we couldn't melt the polar ice cap, we didn't have nuclear weapons, and we couldn't destroy the oceans, even if some crazy person wanted to. But today, by irresponsibility, we're putting the future at risk. So we have a new responsibility. Now we can just forget about it, but my conscience says we can't just forget about it. Just like the conscience of Nelson Mandela said, we have to build bridges. Just like he said, human beings prefer love. He said that. He said that. He also said, things are impossible until they're not. Right? So we have to aim high. We have to aim true. And we have to persist. Because our humanity is what's at stake in that. It's not, we may not be responsible to save the world, but we are responsible to do our best. And I think the greatest accomplishment of FW de Klerk was overcoming fear with courage to do the right thing. And the most extraordinary accomplishment of Nelson Mandela was overcoming resentment for the injustices done against him. And the most important thing that we learn from that is every one of us has the opportunity to overcome those things that impair our humanity with those things that dignify our humanity. May we be the people that dignify our humanity and fulfill our human journey. Thank you so much.
Wow, ladies and gentlemen, indeed inspiring. Whilst Jonathan was speaking, I just remembered a quote that I saw somewhere, and it reads as follows. It says the following: "We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children." Meaning that we are temporary stewards of the earth and have a responsibility to care for its resources for future generations, rather than having ownership that can be depleted. It emphasizes a duty of environmental stewardship and intergenerational responsibility, suggesting our actions today will shape the world our children and grandchildren will inherit. Thank you for reminding us of that responsibility. It's now my honor to call on our chairperson, Elita, to step forward and also share a word of appreciation. And just when she is done, ladies and gentlemen, we will all join the reception. I think it's just, if you go out of these doors, it's to your right, and there at the swimming pool and at the room next to the swimming pool, we will share a nice glass of wine and something to eat. Just don't fall into the swimming pool.
As Jonathan came to sit, he said to me, I think he is with us. And you know what, Jonathan, sorry, I will thank you properly. Since yesterday, I've been so weepy and so wobbly. I don't know why, maybe because you knew him. Yeah. And I arrived at the foundation because we had a meeting an hour late, and I had to apologize. Then I was given a coffee, then I dropped the coffee. So Kanina said, he's here. So going back to you, thank you so much for this very thought-provoking speech, multifaceted. Your words captured the spirit of peace, moral courage, and the global responsibility that defines FW's legacy. And the fact that we've traveled together and we've been together on so many platforms, it makes it very important and very real. and the super Nobel egos that we've endured. You know, it's quite a task. So congratulations for your patience. So as we've been talking about FW, the public person, for me, FW was my husband. I met him in 1989, and after sort of some years of getting there, we were blessed with 25 years of marriage. So I do miss him. I felt that I owe him to look after his foundation. And I'm thankful for the last 2 years that we have Christo, who has put us back in the map. Then I'm going to tell you something else. Because I was there, Madiba and FW were talking about the child, South Africa, the child. And the child was, you know, they had to protect the child. Both of them were pushed by forces that they had to come back where they were supposed to go. And what's very interesting is because of their personalities, they've achieved it, their strengths and the weaknesses. I'm going to tell you something that I discussed with a lady, the president of the Peace Institute of Washington, when they were giving an award for Madiba. I was there, so I said to her, but tell me, and the Palestine was in the height, why people, not that FW wanted it, but FW is not being acknowledged in his country for what he did. And you know what she said? She said, God chose them because the one could take it, the other one couldn't take it, to be judged and castigated. So FW got the difficult side, but Madiba got the incarceration. So they were a good pair. Now, I would like to thank also all of you, our friends, and the CAS Konrad Adenauer Foundation, our partners who never lost faith in us. And we traveled together the path of different sort of conferences, trying to bring a message across. Plus, morality and love are very important that we must never forget. Thank you, Christian. And that's all I have to say this time. Having thrown the coffee, Brenda was worried that I might fall from the steps, but I'm doing well. Thank you very much.
Okay, you must now smile for the paparazzi, ne? Beautiful.
Great. Wow, that's
Wow.
Thank you.
You're welcome to take a photo of me as well, eh?
Let's get a photo.
Come up here.
Let me take it out. Bahrain. Oh my God.
You must smile.
Oh my God. It was so. Imagine.
Okay,
living.
off you go.
Thank you. Can we take the box?
I got the box.
They were reminiscing about the trips that I don't know about.
Bahrain. We went to Bahrain.
Okay.
And FW gave a talk. No, I'll tell everybody.
Okay, come.
No, this was interesting. Well, we put together a delegation of Nobel Peace Laureates to do work in the Middle East. And it was Lech Walesa, President de Klerk, and Jose Ramos Horta, and Kailash, who won a Nobel Prize for Children's Issues. And we went to Bahrain. And they talked about the importance of civil liberties and good governance and peace in the Middle East. And because of the moral authority that they had, I know they had an effect. And FW was basically what he talked about were the principles of good governance. And Mrs. de Klerk pointed out, God, it was hot.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of a beautiful evening. Let's give our speaker another round of applause. Thank you very much. An unforgettable evening, and also lots of real thoughts, thinking about where we are going, not only as South Africa, but as a world. And it just made me realize the important work of the foundation to promote peace, to promote unity, to promote those important values that are embedded in our Constitution. And for that, we will certainly fight. But let me not go into fighting spirit. Let's please, when we go out, enjoy a glass of wine, make new friends, and if you are interested in funding the foundation, talk to me. Thank you very much. Okay.